All right, what's going on, y'all? Welcome back to Camp Paradise Outdoors. If y'all are new here, be sure to hit that like and that subscribe button. I really appreciate all the support that I've been getting. Y'all are great. This is going to be a great podcast today with some great topics to help y'all get some crappie in the boat. And we have a great guest here that has spent years on the water, and I think he has a ton of knowledge on this, and hopefully it'll help y'all out. But without further ado, let's go ahead and introduce our guest, Mr. Jimmy Houston. Mr. Jimmy, I don't know if you need much more of an introduction than that. I'm pretty sure everybody knows the name.
That gets by pretty good right there. I have caught a crappie or two in my or cycle as y'all call them down there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We got all kinds of
Some
names for
places
them.
they call them crappie, and that's in South Carolina and over in that kind of area. But I tell you what, I call them really great fillets,
Oh, that's some of the best fish. I'm telling you, that is definitely some of the best fish. Uh,
no doubt.
but yeah, before we get started on the topics, if you want to, you can introduce us to your book and read a page out of it.
I can do that, Garrett. I just happen to have it right here in front of me. This is Catch a Better Life, which is a daily devotional book that I wrote a couple days ago. A couple years ago. It took me about a year to write it. As a matter of fact, it's difficult to write a 365-day daily devotional. Just for that reason, it's 365 days, and we've got a scripture from the Word of God. We've got a devotional that's built around fishing, and a fishing tip for every single day. So it's called Catch a Better Life. And that's exactly what happens when you get involved with this book. You can get them, of course, anywhere. Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, Hobby Lobby, Bass Pro Shop, Cabela's. You can get them at jimmyhouston.com. We'd be happy to sign them and autograph them, personalize them for you. But we have a YouTube channel also that is actually called Catch a Better Life. Got about 28,000 plus people on that YouTube channel, and that's what that YouTube channel for is simply this. We've got three YouTube channels: Jimmy Houston Outdoors Fishing, and then Jimmy and Chris Houston's Twin Eagle Ranch, and you got about 160 or 170,000 people total on all three of those YouTube channels. We also post the printed version of it. We post the printed version, on our Facebook page, Jimmy Houston Outdoors, all capital letters, and we got about 660 some odd thousand people. So there's a lot of people on that Facebook page. So we probably have around 40 or 50,000 people a day either watch this on one of the social medias, or they actually read it through social media, and then I'll tell them how many thousands out there that read it as their daily devotional. Because one of the great things about a daily devotional, whomever it is, and I have two or three others that I read personally myself every single day, and it just gets you started in the day right. If you read them early in the morning, if you've had a tough day and you read them after you get off of work, it kind of puts your day in perspective and kind of gets all of the hard knocks you took through the day kind of out of your system. And I'll just read May 22nd, which is today. We're looking at the book of Psalm 138:8. The Lord will perfect that which concerns me. Very simple. The Lord will perfect that which concerns me. Whatever I'm worried about, He's going to make perfect. Probably the best and most perfect bait to throw early in the year in the South is an umbrella rig, which we call an Alabama rig, especially in clear water lakes, but it's also productive in dingy water as well. When the bass are hitting the umbrella rig, which we call an A rig, is what most of the tournament guys call it. It can't be beat. I mean, if they are biting that A rig, every other lure you have in your box, no one's going to beat you. You'll beat them on the A rig. We've caught so many huge bass on that bait. A lot of double digit fish. It's amazing how good it really is when they're on it. It's so perfect, as a matter of fact. It's not allowed in the top level tournaments. They've made that bait illegal. I said about a red man spinner bait, which is a bait we made years ago, and actually sold Sam Walton at Walmart when he had only 13 stores. I sold him red man spinner bait, and my little slogan on that was, a bait so good it ought to be illegal. Well, they never made that illegal, but they have made the A rig illegal in some tournaments. I like the bait A rig. It's got five swim jigs on it, lucky swim bait, and some of them only got three. Some can even have more. Some states you're only allowed to use three hooks, so those are made with three. But I like the ones that got five. By the way, I put the one in the middle. I make it different than the other four, which is the one in the dead center, which is one they will bite that one better than or more often than they do the others. In today's verse, King David was praying to a God he knew could perfect whatever problem that he encountered. And King David had a lot of problems in his life. Whatever situation with any enemy, Saul, the king, was trying to kill him, whatever concern he had, and God did. God took care of whatever problems he had, whatever situation he was in. God loved David. He actually said that David was a man after his own heart, after God's heart. David was a man, King David, after God's own heart. Can I tell you that God loves you and me just as well, just as much? And God will make perfect whatever concerns us as well on a day by day basis. Whatever we're concerned about, whatever is happening in our life that's important to us, God will make that perfect. The Lord will perfect that which concerns me. He's busy right now perfecting your family. He's busy right now perfecting your job. He's perfecting your health. He's perfecting your career. God take care of your concerns, whatever they might be. So give your concerns to God today and watch God go into action and take care of you. He'll roll up his sleeves and he'll take care of your concerns. Fishing tip for today, let's see what that is. Adding an oily scent to a jig head will allow it to slide inside a tube easier. You know, a lot of times we fish a tube a lot of different ways. A tube is a hollow bait, got a little kind of a rubber tail. It's some plastic bait, soft plastic, and it's hollow. A lot of times we'll take a jig head and simply slip up inside that tube, have the hook sticking out, but sometimes it's hard to put up in there because the plastic will want to hold it, and you want to, if you put a little heavier jig head, it's just generally almost about too big to put up in there. But if you'll take some oily scent, spray up inside there, it'll slide right up in there. Break it out, tie it on. You want to rig it before you tie it on. So that's a good hit. So we give those every day. We have a Catch a Better Life every day. You can buy these books, of course, a lot of places, or you can get on that Jimmy Houston uh, Outdoors Facebook page or Catch a Better Life YouTube page, and I'll read them to you every single day. It's a good way to start, Garrett. Good idea, man. That was Garrett's idea, not mine, anyway. By the way, folks, that was a good idea. I love it. I love it.
Yes, sir. Well, I really appreciate you taking your time out of your day to be here and to share that book with us. That's a great book. And you know, I tell everybody when it comes to fishing, you know, we love the new stuff, we love the nice boats, we love the electronics, and but we need to remember while we're out there who created us and who created those fish, and keep our heads and our hearts in the right places. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us,
Absolutely. And, you
Mr. Jimmy.
know, one of the things about fishing is that you are in God's creation. You know, I kind of defy, I have talked to many atheists in my lives, and some of them actually on their deathbed, and they still wouldn't believe. But it's hard for me to believe that a person that loves to hunt fish, that loves to get out in the outdoors and spend time, and a lot of times we're out there by ourselves, hunting, especially deer hunting. You see that great big
Right.
giant buck behind you there.
Yes, sir.
We're deer hunting. A lot of times we're doing that by ourselves. Nowadays we have a phone, we have walkie talkies, we have things where we're sharing our experiences with other hunters that are hunting the same area, or maybe somebody that's hundreds of miles away. Hey, you won't believe what I just saw walk by here, you know, a minute ago. 60 yards, and I got a bow in my hand, couldn't get a shot at him.
Right.
But it's an experience we're doing by ourselves, and we've got a chance to really look at and appreciate and understand what God created. And that, you know, we believe in Jesus through faith. We believe in God through faith. And I got to tell you, Garrett, for me to believe that a million years ago, two satellites or meteorites run together up in space and two monkeys popped out, and here we are a million years later, buddy, that takes a lot of faith to believe that. I can't buy that story. And I've heard a lot of fishing stories. I can't buy that monkey story.
Right. Yes,
Some of us
sir.
might act like a monkey at times, and some of us might look like a monkey, but I don't think that's where we started.
That's
No
right.
way.
That's right.
No way.
That's right. Well, I really appreciate you sharing that with us, Mr. Jimmy, and I will put a link down in the description for y'all to just
Fantastic. I appreciate that, Garrett.
click and go right to it. Definitely check it out. Have a few copies here at the house, and really enjoy them. So we'll go ahead and get into it. For those of you that are new to the crappie world, you know, y'all might be struggling getting out there and just struggling locating these fish and getting them in the boat, and that's why we have Mr. Jimmy here today to help y'all out with that. So we'll start out with Mr. Jimmy. If I'm brand new to the scene of crappie fishing, and I have this new lake that I've been wanting to hit, and where should I start? You know, what are the fish doing this time of year, and where should I go to start looking for them?
Well, of course, it all depends on where you live. In the South, most of the crappie are either on the spawn right now or have already finished. As you move up further north, they're just now moving into spawn. They're just now getting in there. So the spawn is pretty much dictating their life wherever they are. They're either in a pre-spawn situation, a spawning situation where they're actually on the bank spawning. When they get there, they are the easiest and simplest to catch, no doubt about it. And then the post-spawn, which is after they get through spawning. And just about anywhere they're in one of those three stages right now. And not all the crappie will spawn at the same time. They need the right kind of areas to spawn in. They like pea gravel, hard type bottoms to spawn in. So you want to be looking for those type of bottoms. Now, if wherever you are, the crappie have not spawned, and one way to really kind of tell where you are in that spawn or not is if you, when you catch a crappie, if the crappie's real white looking and doesn't have any dark color to it, they're probably just getting ready to spawn. That's what they're doing. And we have black crappie and we have white crappie, two distinctly different species, but both of those become very dark colored, really get real dark, real black, get a lot of black in them as they get into that spawning situation. And so if you're catching them, it's got a lot of black in them, they're just now coming in to spawn. And they'll spawn up in relatively shallow water, hard bottoms, pea gravel type bottoms, they're hard sandy bottoms. They lay eggs, so they like a hard bottom where those eggs have some place to set. If they lay eggs around silts, is why they don't use soft bottoms. They lay eggs on silty bottoms. The eggs will go down in there. Sunlight can't get to them, and they just and somehow God lets them know that, and they know that they need that hard bottom. So one of the things you want to do is always, wherever you're looking for those crappie this time of the year, is pay attention to that locator and watch the line on your locator, and you can tell if you got a hard bottom or a soft bottom. The thinner the line you have, the harder the bottom. You can look at the bank and see generally what type bottom that is. If that's a muddy type bank and stuff, it's probably got silt in it. Crappie are probably not going to spawn there. If it's got gravel, pea gravel, rocks, things like that, that's where they're going to spawn. To find them spawning is like one of the easiest things in the world and one of the most fun things, because you just put your trolling motor down, put your crappie jig on. I use Lucky Strike Crappie Magic is what they call it. We've got all kinds of little plastic trailers you put on it. One is called a Lucky Minnow, and Minna, Lucky Minnow, and it's just shaped like a little minnow when you put it on an 1/8 ounce or a 16th ounce jig. I prefer an 1/8 ounce Crappie Magic over 16th most of the time, because it's got a little bit larger hook in it. And then also, if you get a big bass on, which you'll catch a lot of bass when you're crappie fishing as well,
Yes, sir.
that hook will have a better chance of holding him. But you can use all kinds of little soft plastics. I have a box that's got about 10 or 12 different types, and I will change them around colors and types. But that little one that's just simply shaped like a minnow. And I use a chartreuse head or a white head on that, 1/8 ounce or 16th. 1/8 ounce is really 1/8 ounce is really probably, like I said, overall, that's my bet. And simply to locate those is just find those hard bottom places. And those are usually in little pockets, if out on the main lake, or back in a pocket where you have little indentations in there. So you're looking for little tiny coves that they'll go spawn. The females will set up on the points, and the males will go back in a little bit. You catch them if you're catching males, which are usually the blackest one of the ones. You could usually fish out in front of them about 6 or 8 or 9 foot deep and find the females. Once the spawn really gets going, both of them are in there together. The easiest thing is simply put your trolling motor down and go down the bank, just like you're bass fishing, just like you're throwing a red man spinner bait, or you're throwing a crankbait, or fishing a worm or whatever, except you're throwing a little crappie jig. And you throw it out, and basically what you're doing is slow rolling it back in. I like 8 pound test line. You might get a few more bites on 6 pound or 4 pound, but again, you're going to catch some bass while you're crappie fishing. So just go down the bank like you're bass fishing, throw it out there, let it fall, let it slow roll down the contour of your bank. And you can look at a bank and see if it's steep or gradual slope. They like a gradual slope better. But now, a lot of the deeper lakes that we have in the South, they will spawn in little pockets around bluff areas. They have to move back somewhere where that pocket ends and got a little flat in it. So that's one of the really dynamite places. You can find bluffs that's got little tiny pockets in them, and those fish will just load up in those pockets, and you can catch the limit pretty quickly and pretty easily in those. But just go down the bank like you're bass fishing. When you catch a crappie, fish that spot where you caught that one quite a bit more. Sometimes there might be just 2 or 3 fish there. Sometimes you might find the mother lode where you can just catch them cast after cast after cast after cast, and that's what you want to do on the spawn. Now, in some places in the South, well, you just take Louisiana or Oklahoma. If you're pretty far south in either of those states, Alabama, Georgia, a lot of the fish will quit spawning. Usually they will move to some sort of cover, and they will suspend around that cover. Boat docks are really good. Standing timber is really good. Sometimes they'll move right out on the point where they were spawning inside. You're catching them in a cove, and you're not catching them in a cove anymore. Go right out on that point and simply fish down around 10 or 12 foot deep. They normally don't go very deep until the water warms up and we get into the summertime. But you're fishing in relationship to the spawn right now. Remember that. Doing the same thing with a largemouth bass, also exactly the same thing. The fish are in some sort of the spawn, no matter where you are. I was in Michigan day before yesterday, smallmouth fishing. The water temperature up there was 62 and 63 degrees, and some of the lakes was 58, 59, and then it warmed up a real warm day and warmed it up another 4 or 5 degrees, and it really caused those smallmouth to start moving into shallow water. So the spawn dictates those fish's life, a crappie and a largemouth, all the way from, again, depending on where you are in the country, from about February all the way through about May. So think about that. They're spawning. It's like, if you're a deer hunter, you know that the big bucks are moving the most during a rut when they're out chasing the girls. Anytime any wildlife and fish are in a process of spawning, that's the most important thing to them. So you use what you know about that to be able to locate the fish. And that's kind of a long answer, but it covers a lot of type situations. But you keep those little things in mind. You keep those little things in mind, and you'll catch some crappie. And of course, we've got locators now that allow us to really see those things too. So if you happen to have one of those, just go out till you see a big school of them and start fishing.
Right. That Garmin I have is pretty nice. I'm still trying to get the hang of
It's
it.
it's amazing. I actually have two life scopes on the front of my boat. I've got one on the trolling motor, and I actually got a Garmin trolling motor this year. First time I've used them. Excuse me, I got a Power Pole trolling motor, not a Garmin. I got a Garmin life scope on a Power Pole trolling motor, and I've got one on a ride height turret. So I've actually got two life scopes on the front of my boat where we use the one on a trolling motor to scan fast, and then the other one once we go locate the fish to really be able to stay right on them as the boat might move around or whatever.
Yes, sir. That sounds like a setup there. But so as far as colors go, is there a certain color that you would recommend this time of year?
One of the colors that they can really see well, obviously, is red. So if you got some sort of red, I kind of like to have a red, a chartreuse, or a white head on a crappie jig. And the colors that you catch them on, I personally, my number one color is black, like a soft plastics is black and chartreuse, like a black body and a chartreuse tail on it or something. And you can just take one and dip it in, spike it, dip and die, and make any chartreuse tail on any soft plastic that you got. You can take that little swimming minnow we was talking about by Lucky Strike and just dip the tail of it in chartreuse. But the reason I use black and chartreuse a lot during this time of the year to crappie fish, well, any time of the year to crappie fish, they love that color. They hit that color really, really well. But the other thing is, it's just a really, really great bass color, and you probably will catch more bass accidentally using a black and chartreuse than you will about any other color. Solid white's good. Solid chartreuse. Yellow is a good one, but I kind of like a little bit of a two colors. I like to have something that's got a little red in it. Maybe just red eyes on your crappie bait. Maybe just your crappie jig. A little 16th or 8th ounce crappie head jig is pretty tiny. So that head being red makes a huge difference. Um, I fished with a guy when I was a kid, 16, 17 years old, and he's been dead a long time. He was an older man when I was 16. He was probably 70, but I got to fishing with him a lot on Lake Tenkiller, and he taught me a lot about topwater fishing, a lot about all kinds of bass fishing. But when you opened his tackle box up, every lure in there had some red on it. And he was using fingernail polish. He'd take fingernail polish and has a little brush on it like the girls do their nails with. And he'd put polka dots on them. He'd put a little red around the throat. He'd put maybe a red belly. He'd maybe put a little red stripe down the side, maybe paint the mouth of it inside like it had a popping bait. He might paint that red. And I asked him, I said, why did you ruin all your fishing lures? And he was like my dad. He had a big Umco tackle box, which is, you guys have to be older to know what that is. But it's a tackle box that's got about, you open it up, it's got about 5 trays on each side, held a million lures. I mean, if a guy had one of those, he was really a fisherman because it held a million lures, at least a million lures. And so I looked in there and I said, you ruined all your baits. You painted all of them with that fingernail polish. And he told me that represented blood, and that in the wild, what is the weakest of the species, whatever it might be, or if it's injured, that's what gets taken down. That's what gets caught by coyotes and bobcats and stuff, as far as wild animals, and fish that are kind of crippled or get injured or whatever. They're eaten by other fish a little bit quicker. Also, and that made sense to a 16-year-old kid. Now, later on, as we did all of the work at the University of Oklahoma with Dr. Lauren Hill, and with a color selector and what colors bass could see best in most shallow water applications, we found out that the two colors they could see the best was red and blue. So every lure I've ever designed for any company over all these years in this business has had some red and or blue in it. And honestly, a good rule of thumb that I've used forever uh, is to have some red or some blue on your lure. It can be one or the other. Probably better if it's both, and because those are the colors that fish can see the best in most shallow water applications. Bass. Now, a crappie is in a little different lineage. A bluegill's in the same lineage as a largemouth bass, but those are colors. I think we didn't do research with anything but the bass, so I don't know.
Right.
But those are pretty good colors to have. That's a good rule of thumb when you're fishing. You pick out a bait. You know, if you're going to use a shad color, you're going to use a yellow one or a green one or whatever. Have a little red in there. Maybe in your soft plastics, red flake, or maybe if you have a slip sinker on a Texas rig, red slip sinker, the jig head, a red jig head. You know, there's all kinds of little ways you can do that. Crankbaits, every crankbait I've ever developed, we put red eyes in it, red eyes. In fact, one company, Strike King, called one of their baits a red-eyed shad, which, was a copy off of a bait that Cotton Cordell made and that Jack Smithwick made at Rattle Trap.
So is that the same rule of thumb you have for all water clarities? You know, like down here, it's your murkier, muddy water, and in different
Right.
states, you have the more clear water. Like I got a buddy here from
Yeah.
North Carolina that I recently.
Yeah, it's true in most shallow water applications. When we did those research here at the University of Oklahoma with Dr. Lauren Hill, and Dr. Hill's gone now. He died a few years ago, but he spent 9 years on that study. I helped him the last 2 or 3 years of it there at OU, and we were using bass only, and we were using three different water clarities. We had water that was clear, which means that you could see a white marker down in the water 4 foot deep or deeper. You could still see it. Call that clear water. If it disappeared within 2 to 4 feet when you dropped it down the water, we call that murky. And then if it disappeared the first 2 foot you dropped it down, you call that muddy. So as you dropped it down, if it disappeared the first 2 foot of water, you were fishing muddy water. And then we did tests in those three different kinds of water and found out Lauren Hill actually would train bass to strike a certain color disc. Train one to strike a red disc, one to strike a blue one to strike a green, one to strike a black, one to strike a white, one to strike a yellow, so forth and so on. And one to hit to the fluorescent colors, like fluorescent yellow, which is what we call chartreuse. Fluorescent orange, fluorescent green, these different colors of fluorescence. So, and then we would simply put the bass in the tank, and it was trained to go strike a disc, and if it went and struck the right color disc, we would reward it by feeding it. If it didn't, we'd give it a little shock, and kind of like women train us. They feed us when we do well, and they shock us when we do bad.
That's right. That's right.
But it was amazing. He could train those fish, and he did. But you think about that, and you think, oh, Jimmy, that's the dumbest thing in the world, training fish. I saw it happen. I mean, I was involved in it, and and you think about all the wild animals that gets trained. You think something like a falconer. Those are one of that really amazed me. Catch a hawk or an eagle or an owl or a falcon, and train that to turn it loose in the wild and let it fly anywhere in the world it wants to, and it flies out and catches something and flies back and lands on your hand. So if you can train that, you can see how easy it might be to train fish. I mean, first of all, you got them in a tank; they can't get away from you; they're right there.
Right.
But I had a good friend of mine there from Louisiana, Charles Williams, that actually caught hawks and was a falconer, and it would take sometimes months, 2 or 3 months before you could get a hawk to even eat. They would just almost die of starvation before you could get them to eat. But once they started eating and you become their source of food, uh, you could go out and turn them loose in the wild and they go catch you a rabbit or a squirrel or a turkey. So
That's neat. That's neat. So if I'm trying to cast a plastic bait, like the baby shad, like garland type bait with just a 16th ounce jig head, is there, I've heard so many people have different opinions on this. So I just want yours. Do you just need to just a slow reel back, or is there a certain way that you would fish that?
I think on when the fish are in the relationship around the spawn, just slow roll that back. Just throw it out there, let it sink down the contour of the bottom, and just roll slow. I think the rod length is a personal preference, usually around a 6.5 or 7 foot spinning rod. And your spinning reels, you can put the handle where you can crank left-handed or right-handed. I've always cranked spinning reels left-handed, casting reels right-handed. That's just the way I do it. I throw with both hands, and I like, as I mentioned earlier, 8 pound test line. With spinning reels now, I put braid on all of my spinning reels. They are much easier to operate with and have less problems, less tangles, less mess ups if you've got braid on that. And you can use just maybe 15 pound braid or 20 pound braid. 20 pound braid has 6 pound diameter. And if the crappie are biting pretty well, you can tie your crappie magic jigs right to that braided line, right to it. It's 6 pound test diameter. It's 20 pound test to break. You can tie right to it. If down there, like y'all do fish a lot of dingy water. I fished all over Louisiana. I know about that down there, and you have a lot of dingy water. You can mostly, generally tie directly to it. If the bite's more difficult, you can simply put a monofilament or a fluorocarbon leader onto that braid, and the leader could be 3 or 4 or 5 feet, whatever. Also, another thing that you can do with braid is Spike It makes a line coloring pen that is just like it's just like a autograph pen or a Sharpie, except it's a kind it's a little bit larger, and instead of having a point here on the end, it's got a little bit wider and it's got a groove in the middle of it, so you can put it on your line all the way around and color the last foot or 2 or 3 foot of your line. So, and I recommend doing that in braid anytime you're tying to it. Or if you're using anything but fluorocarbon, it's good to do it on monofilament too. Just take that little spike it pin. They make it in several different colors, but a green color or a black colors will probably work just as good as any. And they've got green and black. They've also got some brighter colors if you want to brighten that line up where you can see it real good. You can put a fluorescent color on it, a fluorescent orange, fluorescent yellow, which is chartreuse, on your line so you can see your line better also. And for you visibly to be able to see it better. But I put the black or the brown or the green color on the line. And you just put a couple foot down there and you'll look at it yourself and it looks like your line's going down there and stops. And then there's your jig hanging down on the bottom of it. So coloring the line makes a big difference too. And it helps you on that. But that's a good bass fishing tip too. Do that when you're bass fishing.
Yes, sir.
You're better off if you can tie directly to that braid. When you move into bigger braid, like 50 or 60 or 80 pound tests that we use on some rigs, like an A rig, you're probably better off putting a leader of some sort on there. But again, if they're biting pretty well, if they're biting good, those are the days where that line size doesn't make much difference. The color of the jig doesn't make much difference. The size of the jig doesn't make much difference. The only thing that's really, really important is you being there, you being out there fishing.
That's
That's the
right.
only thing because they're biting. We all love those kind of days. We all love those kind of days. And we have a lot of those type days in the spring as these storms roll around, and we got storms rolling around Oklahoma right now, as a matter of fact. And that's a perfect, perfect day to be fishing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, as far as like when I cast that, let's say a 16 ounce jig head out, right? How would I judge the depth of that jig?
You froze up. You froze up on me there for just a second, Garrett. He's asking about how would
Can
I
you hear me, Mr.
judge.
Jimmy? So if I cast like say let's just say a 16 ounce jig head,
Uh huh.
how would I judge the depth as it falls? How would I judge the depth of that jig?
Well, if you've got a Garmin live scope, just watch it. You can see how deep it's going. But they will, an eighth ounce jig head will fall about a foot to 18 inches per second. So if you want to get that thing down there about 10 foot, you can let it fall 7 or 8 seconds, and it'll get there. I mean, 6 to 8 seconds, and you'll be there. And also, it depends on how tight you're keeping that line. Now, I like to let it fall on tight line, and so as it falls, I'm slowing the fall down a little bit. And if you let it fall out there on a little bit of loose line, your line is looser, it's going to fall faster. You keep it tight because it's being held up here as it falls down. You're keeping it tight, and so it's falling slower. And I think that's important. Plus the fact that you're keeping real good feel and contact of it also. And crappie, fortunately, hit really, really hard. I mean, it's a good, solid, distinct tick usually. As a matter of fact, if you're fishing with a crappie jig and you don't feel the fish bite it, just all of a sudden, oh, there's one on there, probably going to be a largemouth bass in that situation. But crappie is usually a real good thump on that thing, and they suck that jig in pretty hard, and when they do, that jig head hits inside their mouth. That's the thump that you feel. So when you feel that thump, all you got most of the time you just start reeling, but we all set the hook a little bit. You don't want to set the hook real, real hard. Of course, we call crappie paper mouth also. We talked
Right.
earlier, Garrett, that they had a lot of different names, and paper mouth is one of them. And you get into those really big crappie, pound and a half, pound 3/4, 2 pound, 2.5, 3 pound. And y'all have got a lake down there that I've fished several times for crappie darbone.
Oh yeah.
And there's some really big ones there. You definitely want to have a dip net handy with those fish because that paper mouth, you go to lift them in, it'll rip that hook out and the fish will swim away with a. I won't say a sore mouth because they can't feel pain, but a mouth that's a little injured in one spot, but it heals up with the fish just like it does if we cut our hand or our arm or something. It heals up. The only difference is the cut hurts us. It doesn't hurt the fish.
Right. Well, yeah, that's like I'm pretty sure you're familiar with Yucatan. Uh, I love fishing Yucatan, and golly, the crappie that are in that lake, there's some giants. And I was fishing it last year. The river was steadily coming up and down, and I was fishing some flooded piers, and I was just wearing out of school some really nice size perch, and it was the same. I'd get them right up to the boat, and if you didn't have a dip net ready, they were gone. It was.
Oh yeah, yeah, they can pull loose because they pull hard. They have a large mouth. They do eat large baits. One of the things that if you want to really catch bigger crappie, some of the people we talk a lot about 16th and 8th ounce, which those an 8th ounce is probably the most popular jig size during the spring and summer times. You get in the winter, you move down to 16th and 32nd, even 64th in that wintertime fishing. But a 1/4 ounce jig head will catch bigger crappie than an 8th ounce. And a bigger jig head and a bigger piece of soft plastic on it. Larger size minnows. I mean, you look at the mouth of a crappie that's a pound and up, it's a pretty good sized mouth. I mean, we call bass largemouth, but crappie's got a pretty large mouth also. But it's real tender, and they go to fighting hard, and then you get up there and try to lift them in where they got that extra weight. Yeah, a lot of them will get away, and of course we don't do a whole lot of catch and release fishing with crappie. We're
Uh,
pretty much catch and put it in the grease.
yeah, yes, sir. I keep the deep freeze full of them. I can't throw them
Oh
back.
yeah,
I
oh,
just.
yeah. I was up there in Michigan, and the big deal up there, walleye season had just opened up, and then they're all walleye. There's not a whole lot of difference between crappie fillets and walleye fillets. They're both just about as good as they come. But yeah, I think, of course, I'm from the south, so I probably would give a little bit of a advantage to a crappie over a walleye, but I don't know that you can tell much difference. And if you got somebody that knows what they're doing, knows how they're cooking, I had a
Froze up on me,
buddy
Mr.
of mine
Jim.
down. I think you've met him. He's gone on now, but Alan Butler. And Alan Butler would cook catfish and carp and crappie and bass and everything all in the same skillet of fish. And he would he would dare you to you couldn't tell the difference between one or the other. And of course, Alan was not necessarily prone to tell the truth all the time. And so he'd have a plate, and he said, "All right, pick that piece up right there that you got in your plate. Tell me what that is right there." I said, "Man, it's really good. That's what it is, Alan." And he'd say, "Is that a crappie? Is that a crappie or a catfish?" I'd say, "No, that's a crappie right there. I'm telling you, that's a crappie." And he said, "Well, that's a carp you just ate." I don't know if he's telling the truth about all that or not. I think he might have been just frying up all crappie and telling everybody it was everything
Uh
else.
huh.
So,
Yeah. Yes, sir.
You never know what you're going to eat when you're in Louisiana anyway. Just know it's going to be good. Go ahead and eat it. Don't worry about it.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
You still got eyeballs looking at you. You can cover the eyes up and eat it.
yeah,
That's fine.
yeah. My granddaddy, we used to throw a soft shell turtle in the gumbo and everything else, and he'd just be like, "Eat it. It tastes like chicken. If it tastes like chicken, it is. Just eat
I've
it."
seen. I've been down there eating gumbo at a basketball tournament one time years ago. A guy had a party and had one of them big giant gumbo pots, one that you can make enough gumbo for about 100 people. And I was over there getting me a bowl, putting on some rice, and I looked down at it, and there's a catfish head, just the head, not the whole catfish, just the head. And it wasn't even a channel cat; it was a bullhead, or what people call a yellow cat. You catch them in the creeks and stuff. Not a flathead, not a half, but a bullhead. We call them bullhead. We call them all the time when we was kids. And that guy that was putting that party on, I told him, I said, "Hey, dude," I said, there is uh, a catfish head in this gumbo." He said, "Shh, be quiet." He said, "Everybody will want one of them." I said, "There ain't but one in there."
Oh man.
So but y'all do know y'all definitely do know how to cook up there.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna walk out on the porch. You've been here. You know what this looks like. We got a few deer head hanging around. You got a beautiful, beautiful deer head there behind you. We got a we got a few nice buddies over here as well.
Oh yeah. And
That's a big old boy.
you got a beautiful place out there, Mr. Jimmy.
Yeah, this is old ugly right here. We call that deer old ugly. He scored 130 on one side. The other
Ooh,
side didn't score much. But anyway,
man, I'd fall out the tree.
I I just got it. I just got it. Well, I just about did. I guarantee you. I just got to walk outside. I can't stay inside very long. I've always been really really claustrophobic, and getting a deer stand or something like that, and before it gets daylight, and if you get in a box before you get daylight and you can't see, I got to get out of that thing, get outside. I'm kind of that way about being inside. I can look out a window and I'll be okay, but I got to get outside just as much as I can. That's for sure.
Yes, sir. I'm about the same way. I come over here to the camp, sit down for a minute. I got to get out there and do something. That fresh
Nothing
air,
wrong with that. Nothing wrong with
that
that.
fresh air makes you feel good.
Thought we might see a deer run around out here. I don't see any though.
Well,
We've had 6 babies born in the last 2 days, in their pens though, so that's good. Three deer have had. All three of them had twins, and all of them had a boy and a girl, boy and a girl, boy and a girl. So that's good.
that's
That's a
good.
good situation.
Well, I guess we'll wrap it up with folks that are wanting to get started in this, and just let's just say they have a little John boat with a 9.9, and they're trying to buy them some tackle to get started. What would you recommend for them to get on the
Yes,
water?
for crappie fishing and you bass fishing with them too. We use them all the time. And the tournament guys have got to where in a lot of the tournaments now where everybody's using live scopes and they're using spinning rods and swim baits and finding fish, locating fish, and mostly hunting, not fishing when you're using a live scope and they're finding those fish and use a lot of spinning rod. But a spinning rod, 6.5 or 7 foot, kind of depends on your personal preference on it. I like a medium rod or a medium heavy. I like that medium heavy because I do throw a lot of 1/8 ounce, and then sometimes getting really big fish, I'll throw some 1/4 ounce. But a medium heavy rod, 8 pound test line if you're going to use monofilament or fluorocarbon. I recommend on a spinning rod using the braid, like I said, 20-pound braid works great. 20-pound braid, you can tie your lures directly to it if you want to. It's only 6 pound diameter. Be sure and get that spike it pins, the coloring pins, and you can color the last couple foot of your line down there black or green or something like that. You just put that pin right in your tackle box, and it's got the slot where you just put it on your line, color it right down by the bait, and uh, and then 1/8 ounce, 16th ounce jigs. I use Crappie Magic by Lucky Strike. They're very inexpensive and they've got a little keeper on them where they hold the soft plastic and just get you a variety of soft plastics that you like. Little curly tails, little turbo type tails, which kind of looks like a tube type tail. The minnow, ones that shape like a minnow, or even so they got some that's small that's shaped like a little crawl. But the ones that shape like a little minnow, that's what crappie are eating most of the time. And it doesn't take much. I know you can go to a lot of stores. Lucky Strike makes little crappie kits. It's got like 8 or 10 little jigs in them, and then 4 or 5 different. And those kits are about $10 for the whole kit. and 4 or 5 different types of trailers you put on them, and they're very inexpensive, and you can go out and we hear all our life that the most expensive thing we eat is fish because we spend so much money. And, I've got a brand new $130,000 Ranger boat. So if I was going to, whatever crappie or whatever fish I catch and eat out of that, they are by the pound pretty expensive. But,
Yes, sir.
you could spend almost no money at all to go crappie fishing and catch a lot of crappie. And, since we got to give $10 for a hamburger now at McDonald's,
Right.
to get a fries and a drink with it, or I stopped on the way back from Michigan the other day and bought 2 quarter pounders with cheese and a vanilla shake, and it's $14.
Golly.
I didn't get any French fries. They did say thank you very much for what I paid them, but yeah, so you can go out and catch you a big bunch of crappie to feed all the wife and kids and the neighbors and the youngins, and for a little crappie kit that costs $8 at Bass Pro Shop, and just have a blast with it. But and it's really great. Those crappie jigs are great to let kids use all year round. Here's another little tip that I use crappie fishing. I smash the barbs down. Now I fish barbless all the time anyway. I smash all the barbs down on my bass bait. But I've been doing it crappie fishing for years because when you get in the crappie, you catch quite a few of them. And so you smash those barbs down, it just allows you to unhook them quicker and put them in a live well and get your bait back out there.
Right.
And also, if you've got that barb smashed down, if you get hung up in the brush, it's a lot easier to get it unhung because it doesn't have a barb to hold it inside the brush. So barbless will save you some crappie jigs, allow you to use a crappie jig a lot longer and not hang it up and lose it. You won't hardly lose many crappie. You'll lose one every now and then, but you lose one every now and then with a barb on it.
Right.
So barbless hooks for crappie is really a good way to go.
Well, I really appreciate your time, Mr. Jimmy, and I'm sure this really helps some folks out. And hopefully, y'all that are listening to this and tuning in, hopefully y'all can get on some. Hopefully, this information that Mr. Jimmy shared has really helped y'all out, and y'all can fill up an ice chest full. You don't need all the nice stuff to get started. Just go get you some tackle and get out there in the water and have a good time. So
Absolutely. I got a guy on his way down here right now that you might know has caught a crappie or two. You probably seen him catch a crappie or two, Mr. Ross Cagle.
Oh
His
man,
brother Steve's on the way down, and they coming down and do a little bass fishing, but I bet you they catch some crappie while they're here.
oh yeah, I think Mr. Ross holds all the spots for himself. I don't think he tells me where they're at.
Yeah, he better be bringing a bunch of crawfish with him. That's all I can say.
Oh, I'm sure he will. Well,
we got about 1,000 pounds coming to put in the lakes, and about another 6 sacks to boil. We got a big crawfish boil planned for Saturday night.
oh, it sounds like it's gonna be a blast.
Gonna be good. Gonna be really, really good. Did I lose you? Oh, we went away.
Breaking up with Mr. Jimmy. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I heard you there, Carrot, but you froze up there for a minute, but you're in good shape right now. Froze up again.
Having a little connection issues, but seemed like we made it through all right.
I'm out in the boonies. My ranch, it's way back. We're 3 miles off the county road. I got one of those Elon Musk Starlight deals here that we got our internet through and our Wi-Fi and all that. So, but even with that, it's not always perfect. Sometimes it doesn't work very good.
Yes, sir. Those studios at the camp, we have to run the same. We have old Starlink hooked up out here. And
it worked good. I like it. It's pretty fast.
Yes, sir.
Make Elon a little money. He's about to go broke.
That's right.
Nobody buying Teslas anymore.
Well, Mr. Jimmy,
everybody's buying 4-wheel drive trucks.
That's right. And keep doing it.
Absolutely. All right, buddy. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you, and y'all be sure to hit that like and that subscribe button, and go ahead and check down in the description and click on the link to his book and get it ordered and check it out.
You bet. I appreciate you. You have a good one.
You too, Mr. Jimmy.
Take care.